Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airy Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airy Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
What up, y'all? It's your boy, Rich Airy. This is Airy Bros Radio. As always, my dance partner, the Prince of 1512. What up, dog?
You. What up, Richie Rich? How you living today?
Living large, living in charge. It was all a dream. I used to read Runner's World magazine.
Yo, I like what you did there, kid.
You like that shit?
Yeah, I used to read Wrestling USA magazine.
That's what I was going to say. I should have said I used to read USA Wrestling magazine because we got some wrestlers, some coaches coming up in, is it in honor of the UWW World Championships?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we probably would have had them on without the World Championships. We're going to have a special week of World Championship podcast.
Yeah, special week of wrestling podcast, so buckle up. We've got Reece, highlight, Humphrey, head coach of the NJRTC, the New Jersey Regional Training Center based out of Rutgers, New Jersey, Rutgers University, and Princeton University.
Yeah, it was a good episode. It was an epic conversation we got to have with Reece, real down-to-earth, humble guy, and was pretty open about what they got going on at the NJRTC. And it was good getting to sit down with a 3-time world team member. You know, definitely a humble experience.
3-time world team member and now head coach, as I mentioned, of the NJRTC, which has 2 world team members that are going to Kazakhstan, right? Not Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan. And we'll be competing and hoping, and not hoping, but have prepared themselves to take a swing at a gold medal at the World Championships.
Yeah, it was really good getting to have Reece on to talk about Tyler Graff.
It's Graff.
Tyler Graff.
There's no T. Tyler Graff, PD3, Paul Downey.
Yeah.
2 beasts.
Yeah, I mean, you know, coming from a wrestling background and having the ability to have a coach of 2 world team members on to kind of preview the world championships is amazing, right? That's what we want to be doing, is putting people over like that. So to get to have Reece come on the show 2 weeks prior and we can put it out the week of, to me that's a special thing, and I hope everyone really enjoys this, especially all you wrestling fans out there.
Yeah, this was a great episode. Reece is a great guy, super athletic, both on the NCAA level and on the world level of freestyle. They don't call him Highlight Humphrey for nothing. He comes from a wrestling family. His dad was a world silver medalist. He was also an Olympic team coach, both for Team USA and for Team Canada, I think he mentions. And yeah, for all those Airy Bros fans back home in New Jersey, pay attention to what's going on in New Jersey when it comes to wrestling. All right, you got Rutgers University and Princeton University are both on the rise at the NCAA level, and then just the support that they're putting into the Olympic level and what those guys got going down there, some of the new guys that they just brought in. And yeah, great episode, great guest, and hope you all enjoy it as much as Jimmy and I did with the conversation with Reece. Reece, Highlight, Humphrey, welcome to Airy Bros Radio. Pleasure to have you on. Hope you're having a great day back in New Jersey. And while we got you here, why don't you just give us a little bit about background about who you are, where you're from, and where you're at right now.
All right, well, thanks for having me on, guys. I am a 3-time U.S. Open champion, 3-time world team member, for Team USA, and I'm currently the head coach of the NJRTC, which is a combined effort between Princeton and Rutgers universities, trying to get senior athletes on the world and Olympic teams and hopefully winning the title coming up in a couple weeks.
And you've got a couple guys representing USA, right?
Yeah, we have Tyler Graff at 61 kilos. He's the number one guy in the United States, so he's on the world team. On his first world team, looking to bring back some hardware once we go to Kazakhstan. And we also have the representative at 86 kilos, and Pat Downey. It's his first world team as well. And we only started this thing, the NJRTC, about, I'm going to say 17 months ago. And to have two guys on the world team, this thing is growing very fast, and we're having a lot of success. And we're excited to challenge ourselves at the World Championships.
Right on. Will you be going to Kazakhstan?
Yep. So we leave on September 6th to go to Germany for acclimation camp, and we'll spend about 7 or 8 days there, and then head over to Kazakhstan to acclimate to that time and to find out what the venue's like and get everything in place to be perfect peak performance at the World Championships. And then the Worlds would be like 3 or 4 days, depending on when they compete. They'll have just a 2-day tournament, but different guys, different weight classes, or different days. So we got to get over there early enough to acclimate to that and to get used to those venues and practice it and make it as easy as possible on the athletes. So that's kind of our next 17 days will be overseas.
And are all the guys back in New Jersey? I know you guys were out here in the Springs for a minute. Is everyone back home in NJ, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so Bryce Meredith went out to be Tyler Graff's training partner, and Nate Jackson's going to be Downey's training partner when we head out to Germany and Kazakhstan for the Worlds. But they just got back on Saturday, so we have about a week here, and then we'll take back off. And these guys have had a really busy summer with training camps and competitions, all in preparation for the Worlds coming up real soon. So we're very excited.
And with that busy summer, were you able to make it down to the Jersey Shore at all? Where are you at right now? Where in New Jersey are you living?
Yep, I'm in South Brunswick, which is 15 minutes to both Princeton and Rutgers, so it's kind of central for what I do. It's kind of perfect. But yes, I'm out at the shore as often as possible, taking my kids out there. Anthony Ashnault is on our squad now, and he's got a place right on the beach, so we find that as our home base a little bit. And it's awesome down there. I'm trying to get down there as much as possible. And also we head into New York City, which is about an hour away as well. So it's a lot of things to do out on the East Coast, and we have a lot of good wrestling right by us too.
And before the NJRTC, had you been to New Jersey at all?
I've been to the city a bunch in New York, but I don't think I was really in Jersey very much, if ever, before I came out. And then Joe Dubuque gave me a call when I was out in California coaching for Titan Mercury, and he said some pretty promising things. And then once I took the visit, once I saw the atmosphere and the exponential growth of both programs, it was a done deal for me. Once I came and visited and saw it in person, it was a pretty easy choice for me to make the move.
And you guys have a pretty unique setup with the NJRTC, where a lot of the RTCs are in one particular location. New Jersey has, you guys split time between Rutgers and Princeton. Who was behind all that? How did the NJRTC come about? And I know there's right now there's some things going on with some of the NCAA coaches giving a little pushback about the involvement in the RTCs and at the colleges and stuff like that. So, I mean, how did all this come about? And
yeah, so it was like I said, we're pretty new. We're less than a year and a half old, but it was Dubuque and Ayers and Coach Goodale and Donnie Pritzloff were the head of trying to make this thing happen, and they just decided that they needed a head coach before they wanted to grow this thing. And so they called me up, and once I got here, it was just really Nate Jackson and I. We were the two guys in this RTC for maybe the first 4 or 5 months, just us. And then we started to grow a little bit. We got Pat Downey, and then lately we got Bryce Meredith and Anthony Ashnault and Tyler Graff, and we had CJ Brucki along the way. So we've had we've grown pretty fast, but I would say Ayers and Dubuque were the driving forces that really made the calls to me and made it start. But we're funded very heavily through two Princeton donors, and Mike Novogratz and Rich Tavoso, and then we also have a lot of help from the Rutgers side with Joe Agressi, and they have a huge support system throughout their board and on both sides. So it's really awesome to split it between both Princeton and Rutgers, and it really lets us be able to double in size. See, Princeton funds 3 of our athletes, and Rutgers funds the other 3. So if it was just one location, we'd be half the size and probably half as successful, or less. So working together has been a huge benefit for both programs and the NJRTC.
Now, Reece, you had stated that the colleges split the amount of funding to the athletes. How do you guys go about getting athletes? Is there an active recruiting process of getting guys coming out of college, or you guys just have an open door policy? You let guys come and try it out, and how they fit is how it goes from there?
Yep, anybody can come in at any time. It's open door, but like I said, we were just Nate and I in the beginning for a while, so it was kind of my focus. Like every tournament, I was asking everybody if they were happy and what they wanted to do with their career, and then senior level guys who were kind of solidified in where they were, it was like almost impossible to get them to train or to get them to switch training locations without paying them a crazy amount of money. And we didn't have that many guys, so it was kind of hard to get people to buy into a vision, you know. And so now that we have some guys who are doing well, I'm getting a lot more calls and a lot more people knocking on our door and trying to get in our practice now. But in the beginning, it was very, very difficult to get guys to transfer or move, because we're not paying these guys a crazy amount. I know people think that Princeton might have a ton of money, but that's not the case. They fundraise for every cent that they have, and same thing with Rutgers. Being a Big Ten school, it's not so easy. I mean, being a Big Ten is an advantage, but it's not as easy as people might think it is. These guys work very, very hard to make this program successful, and so there's been a lot of hard work behind it on the recruiting side and the fundraising side, and we're going to keep that thing rolling, and hopefully we can blow this thing up to where the fundraising kind of works for itself and makes it a lot easier. We keep having success. Hopefully that'll keep bringing the dollars in, and we can keep building the budget and growing the budget and keep getting more athletes, and hopefully have a full team so we can start these RTC duels.
Is that the end game, to have a full team, so that are all the RTCs looking to do that, so you can have duels and stuff to kind of promote the sport and bring the fans in for it?
I would love to have that. My goal is to get the athlete paid. Being a wrestler and growing up in the wrestling lifestyle, it's like you got to fight for every penny, and these guys are hungry and they're trying to make ends meet all the time, and it's just getting better and better for the athlete. But if we compare it to any other sport, we're getting paid nothing still. I think it's just way better for the athlete now, and you can see how every superstar college athlete is coming out, and their college or university wants to keep them, so they're finding funding for that. They're understanding the importance of keeping these guys around and keeping them training alongside the college guys. But it can always be better, and if this is the next avenue, these RTC duels, if that's the next avenue to get these guys paid more and get them more limelight or more spotlight on them to help grow their brand, I'm all about it.
Now, you had mentioned the ROTC duels, to have RTC duels to raise money. What are some of the other ideas you guys have been coming up with or brainstorming on how to get these athletes paid?
So my big thing is to grow the athlete's brand. That's just a free thing that anybody can do that pays dividends exponentially as you start to grow it. And we have guys like Anthony Ashnault and Bryce Meredith who have these huge brands already. And I think you'll notice with our NJRTC Instagram page and Twitter that we spend a lot of time trying to show how much fun we're having and how hard we're working, and shine some light on the positives that wrestling brings. And in turn, we get sponsors out of this. We get more camps and more private lessons for the guys, and so it just makes their life a little bit easier, because we are not we give them as much as we can, but it's not as much as I think they deserve. These guys are professional athletes, and it's nice that they are comfortable enough to not have a job, but I'd like them to be more comfortable and be able to do this for as long as possible, because then Team USA is just going to keep getting better and better, and we're going to start to become a dominant force instead of just the top 3 program.
So are the guys allowed to have independent sponsors?
Yeah, of course. So normal clubs like Titan Mercury and NYC and Sunkist fund all the travel and housing once we go overseas. I think you get like 1 overseas trip, and then anything domestic, they'll cover your flights. And then Team USA pays for 1 overseas trip and then some other camps and things like that. And then there's also, you can have apparel, and then you can have shoes be separate, and then supplements, and pretty much anybody that'll give you money, these guys will support them. And I think that it's worth it. It's a win-win for both people, because we're not expensive. We're in the wrestling world, and we have pretty big fan base, and these fans are loyal. So I think that the companies get what they offer in return. I think it's a win-win.
When you were at Ohio State, did they have the Ohio RTC going on then?
Yeah. When I was training at the Ohio RTC, we had 5 guys on the world team out of 7 weight classes, with Angel Escobedo, myself, J.D. Bergman, Tervel Delagna, and Keith Gavin.
So you just mentioned how established and how competitive you guys were. What are the differences that you see in starting the NJRTC opposed to being at such an established RTC like Ohio?
Yeah, we weren't really established when I got started there. It started out with Tommy Rollins and Joe Heskett was the original Ohio RTC, and back then there wasn't really a ton of RTCs. Maybe it was just like Penn State, the Hawkeye RTC, Okie State, and maybe a couple other ones, maybe Michigan. Yeah, Michigan definitely had one. So it was mainly just the big ones, and then a couple other guys training out of their college rooms. But right now it's like everybody has an RTC, and they're all trying to keep their superstars and find funding for them. And it's great for wrestling. I think just raises the bar much, much faster than if you were the best guy in the room and you were training to win the NCAAs. But yeah, I just think that we do it a little different, as we are freestyle all year. We don't really go into the college practice at Princeton or Rutgers. We do freestyle all year. And if we want to bring in a guy like Soriano or a Matt Kolodzik or Pat Brucki, these guys come into my practice, and then they wrestle our guys freestyle. And I think it benefits both guys, but I think that our freestyle makes huge gains on the other guys that are more of a, I want to say, in addition to the NCAA room, to the university room. Our guys wrestle freestyle all year, and we are doing parterre and edge of the mat stuff all year round instead of just normal 4 months of freestyle season. So I think that's where we made our biggest jumps, at least domestically, and making those things like takedown to turn and making the freestyle just a part of your wrestling instead of having to think a little bit out there.
So do you get guys like Soriano or Ashnault when he was still in school, or Kolodzik? Are they coming in to do freestyle in the middle of college season?
Yeah, not as often as I would like, and I thought that, but it's hard to take guys out of the room, you know. So there was a lot of times where it was just maybe 3 or 4 of us in my practice, and we would just focus on technique and focus on freestyle. And then Nate would even do my practice and then go to the Princeton practice to coach. So he was kind of doing back-to-back, doubling up all the time. But Soriano, I saw a lot during the season, at least the beginning of the season. And once it gets down to the nitty-gritty, coming into the Big Tens and Nationals, it gets a little bit more difficult. And the college coaches need those guys in the room. But they were definitely in there a good amount during the season.
We just released a podcast today with Coach Brian Heller, and one of the topics we talked about was the benefits of training freestyle for Scholastic and talking the high school or the college kids into doing freestyle. What do you, as a former competitor, now coach, see the benefits of freestyle for someone who's still actively doing Scholastic?
Yeah, so if you're wrestling folk style, the folk style season is only 3 months in high school and 4 or 5 months in college, maybe 6 months, at least not. And then the competitive part is going to be even less than that. So it's so many more matches. It's a whole extra season that you're getting in when you wrestle freestyle. And I think that's just one. You're going to get an extra 50 matches if you wrestle all the tournaments and go to the biggest national events. You're going to see better competition in freestyle. And then it also teaches you positional awareness and things that you can't get away with in freestyle that you can in folk style. Keeping your head up, you don't get crotch locked and chest locked. But in folk style, you can get away with it a little bit, letting your hips come up and bringing your head down and create a scramble. And I think that freestyle is a must. I would wrestle freestyle and Greco and get used to being uncomfortable and getting used to different positions that freestyle provides, and then fixing techniques that need to be fixed in both freestyle and folk style. And then it also just changes the season from 4 months to 12 months. And it's an all year round thing if you really want to be the best in today's era where all these kids are starting at a young age and going hard from the very beginning. I think it needs to be a 12-month thing, and freestyle and Greco provide that.
Talking about young kids getting an early start, give us a little bit about your background. Jimmy and I both know your upbringing and kind of the household that you grew up with. Your dad is very well known. He was a high level competitor, but he was also a high level coach. How much of that? I mean, were you one of those guys that was on the mat at 3 years old and kind of following around through the circuit and stuff like that? I mean, what was it like growing up for you?
Yeah, so my dad never pushed wrestling on me, and it wasn't even just never pushed it. It was like the opposite. Like my dad was in sales. I had no idea that he was a wrestler. I remember coming home and telling him I wanted to wrestle, and it was because my buddy wrestled. It had nothing to do with my dad telling me about it or anything like that. I just remember his eyes lighting up and me thinking like it was such a memorable experience. So I was like, why is he so excited about this? And that's how clueless I was to his past. And I remember he had a lot of wrestler friends, but I really never put two and two together. And even when I started middle school practice, and that was my first year of wrestling in 6th grade. So no youth, no little kids tournaments for me. And I remember my dad coming into practice, and I remember thinking, like, sure, you're good at doing push-ups and pull-ups, but what do you know about wrestling? And so just totally oblivious to the fact that he had a world silver medal in his pocket and coached the Olympic team for USA and once for Canada. So pretty different experience than most of the youth parents that I come across.
Yeah, I was not expecting that response at all. Jimmy and I are sitting here looking at each other, kind of smiling, but that's a beautiful thing to hear because, you know, we've always growing up in New Jersey, and I think nowadays it doesn't matter what sport it is or pageants or whatever. Like there's just crazy parents out there that live vicariously through their kids, regardless of the sport or whatever. But you know, we had always wanted to like just follow around specific parents at the New Jersey State tournament and just get sound bites and clips of people losing their minds and stuff. So to hear that you had no idea of any of that, at what point into that first year, 6th grade of wrestling, did you see the medal? Did you get the background? Did you get all the information? You're like, holy cow.
Yeah, I really don't know because I'm sure I knew that stuff. Like looking back, I had, as much as my dad loves to talk about wrestling, like he had to have told me. I just, like, for whatever reason, he tricked me into thinking that he wasn't this wrestling guy because then it puts a lot of pressure and then you got shoes to fill. And wrestling, it's such a difficult sport. It has to be for yourself. And I mean, there's a few success stories of kids who their dads really pushed them hard and made them go to practice and all the time and 2-a-days and extra conditioning all the time. And some of those kids turn out great, but I think the majority of them burn out, or once they get to college and they get away from their dad, they really just don't want to do it anymore. And wrestling it's way too hard if you don't want to do it. And with as grind as the practice is, and then you add cutting weight, and then you add the second practice a day, it can get very, very brutal, even if you really love it and want to be there. So if you're doing it for somebody else, it's going to get tough.
Yeah, I can probably name off at least 5 kids that won state titles or multiple state titles on fumes that were so over it, by the time they got to high school, but because they had been from this club to that club and done this in the summer, that they were so polished that, like I said, they won at least 1, if not 2 or 3 state titles just on fumes, and we're so over it. And, never, and that's the big thing with us is we're trying to, when we had Coach Heller on, we had Mike on, is like we're just trying to bring a positive experience and light to wrestling, because I think a lot of people come away with it maybe a bad taste in their mouth because of parents like that or because of cutting weight. And that was another thing when you mentioned it, I was going to ask you, your thoughts on cutting weight and versus wrestling at your natural weight when you're eating properly and those sorts of things. Like, what are those guys? Are those guys cutting a lot that you're working with, or are they pretty close to walk around weight?
Yeah, so I'll give you my personal experience first. I think I cut way, way too much my whole career, really. Maybe not in high school. I don't think I cut very much in high school, but I always was in this situation where it fit for me to go down with our team. We had Jay Jaggers and then Lance Palmer above me. It was like, out of us 3, none of us could be out of the lineup, so we all just kind of had to go those weights. And so we stayed there, and so then it kind of just built this thing where I needed to stay at this weight, and I kind of had to cut weight, and it's just kind of the way my career worked out. So if you're forced in this situation, you make the best of it. But if I was going to suggest something, I wouldn't say wrestle your natural weight, but I wouldn't say cut weight either. I would say you could find a balance in between, and I would even lean more towards wrestle your natural weight. And maybe, depending on how old you are, it could be, I don't want to suggest cutting weight at all for anybody in youth sports, but if you're in high school, I'm thinking cut 4 to 5 pounds, something that's easy to make, something you can do consistently. It's a couple workouts or maybe just one workout or one light meal close to weigh-in. And then in college, it could get a little bit more depending on how your body works. You guys should know at this point if you're a college guy, but I'm still thinking like 7 at the most. If you're starting to cut 10 every Monday or 12 every Monday and you're already pretty lean, and I'm talking about cutting weight, not losing weight. If you can diet and lose weight and get to fighting shape, then I'm all about it. But once you have to start losing water weight and you have to really shrink your body, I think that becomes detrimental to your success and your training. If you can't train hard throughout the whole season, you are not going to get better, and you're probably going to get worse. You don't really stay the same. And I've gone through that. And then I went to freestyle, and I had night before weigh-ins, and I competed once every 8 weeks so I could really train hard, and then I could cut a lot of weight. And I cut a lot of weight, and I performed well. But I still think that I would have been better if I stayed up and really fought through that battle of trying to jump up a weight class and taking my time and taking some lumps up at the weight above me. But that's hearsay, so I'll go into my guys. My NJRTC guys are not cutting a lot of weight. Downey walks around. He probably touches weight every single day. Graff makes weight after he has to work pretty hard to make weight, but he makes weight, or probably comes down to 2 kilos when he's really training hard and he's really staying focused. So our 2 best guys, 2 guys on the world team, are consistently touching down the weight or close to it. And I think that it helps their training. And when they get out there on competition day, they feel like it's just another day, and they can really focus on the techniques and the positioning and strategy instead of really wondering if their legs are going to get tired.
Now, with the day before weigh-ins, are those guys allowed to use IVs and whatnot to rehydrate?
Day before weigh-ins, I don't know if it was legal or not, but I know a lot of guys that did it. I did it once, and I felt huge and slow and sluggish, so I really didn't like it. But night before, you have enough time to put in. You could get 20 pounds if you wanted to. I would be like 14 or 15 over an hour or 2 later after weigh-ins because I didn't have to worry about competing. So the IV wasn't really necessary for me because having the whole night, I would always get really big and then run and sweat and lose some of it and then drink and refuel again. That was kind of my process after the night before weigh-ins. But IVs were not a thing in my life, really.
When you were in college and you were cutting, how much were you cutting?
I would say consistently like 12 over on a Monday, and I'd be like kind of the same thing, like Friday, Sunday duels, I'd be like 11 over or 10 over after that Friday night. And I just did it so poorly, and I just worked it all off all the time and always refueled a little bit too much. I should have just stayed on a diet a little bit better, but it was just, I was so lean already. It was really hard for me to keep down.
And at the college level, do you have people that are working with you on that sort of stuff, or are you kind of left to your own devices to figure that out?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people and a lot of resources that will help you, but I think I was cutting too much to mentally listen to these guys. I think I was a little bit broken. I had my dad give me advice, and Tom, Ryan, and Lou Roselli give me advice, and we had a nutritionist, but I think it was on me. I had a hard time listening to doing the right things, and I wanted everybody to know how bad I was hurting, so I did things wrong and cut corners, and I still had some success, but there was just way too often where that was the battle the whole year.
So kind of a follow-up to what I was going to ask, do you feel it's more of a common sense thing than a lack of nutritional education that the wrestlers are getting? It's just that hard-headed wrestling philosophy, and I'll just put a garbage bag on and sweat this off, opposed to do it right all year round, eat right all year round, and not have to worry about that?
I think a lot of people know the formula, but I think everybody could have a refresher course. I think once you get to college, you kind of know your body and you know your system. And even if you're doing it a little bit poorly, if you take time to do it and you do it 6 weeks out and then hold it and do the right things all season, I think there's a ton of ways to do it and be healthy and be powerful. But if you're cutting too much, I don't think there's too much advice to give. So, I mean, there's a lot of resources once you get to college, but in high school, you do what your coach says, and a lot of times your coach has no idea what he's talking about. And a lot of times you do what your dad says, and your dad's one of these parents who cares a lot and who's really intense, but they have no idea what they're talking about. So, yeah, I hope there's some educational stuff coming out at some point. But right now, I would say just focus on making good choices for as long as time as you can.
And now you mentioned, year-round style of training with the NJRTC, that you guys are doing freestyle year-round. And are you having micro and macro cycles to kind of peak, or does that kind of fall in place as guys get through the Open or to Final X and make the team? How does all that work out?
Yeah, there's so many different moving parts to the NJRTC. We've got guys at CJ is at TCMJ, is at the College of New Jersey. Princeton has Nate Jackson and Bryce Meredith, and then Anthony Ashnault and Graff are over at Rutgers, and Downey's over at Rutgers. So there's a lot of different things moving and going along. So I'm just trying to stay flexible and figure out everybody's schedule, and we meet at least once a day and hopefully twice a day, but the morning is normally optional for especially for the guys who are on staff at Princeton and Rutgers. But then we definitely cycle for the big tournaments. Like, we train hard all year round, but we pick it up, I would say 5 weeks out, 6 weeks out, and go really hard until there's like a week and a half left, and then we taper off and let these guys kind of recover and get their bodies fresh and manage their weight, and then we get after it for things like the U.S. Open, World Team Trials, any overseas tournament that we're prepping for the World Championships, and then the biggest one and the most focused is the Worlds coming up.
Now, with the World Championships coming up, how much do you have control of your athletes training that are competing in that, and how much of their training is being programmed by the United States wrestling team?
I would say that we have control over the majority of it, but the Team USA has brought them out for camp 3 times, and we've been gone for overseas competition kind of in between there, with Downey being at the Pan Am Games, and Graff and Nate going to Belarus. So I mean, we're gone a lot. So it's kind of like it's kind of be flexible and have your own plan as an athlete. But I would say it's kind of split, really. We've just been so focused on so many things. There's so many moving parts and tournaments and camps that we have to go to that everybody kind of has their own plan, and I'm just trying to stay here and help as much as I can.
With Graff and Downey, this is their first world team, correct?
Yes.
What are the goals? What are the expectations? What's the mindset going into this World Championships?
Well, they're both new. They are the only two guys on the Team USA that aren't ranked in the world, and I think that's really just due to they haven't competed enough. I think they're both definitely prepared to be in medal matches, and I think that we're very, very prepared. I expect them to be in the medal match, but there's so many different curveballs that can happen. They could win. They could go 0-1. It's a very, very tough tournament, so we're prepared to take any draw, the toughest draw, and we're prepared to take the easy draw or whatever, and we're just going to scout these guys and be prepared for their different number one attacks, and hopefully we can keep staying strong and come home with 2 medals at 61 and 86, and I'm really excited.
Is Pat going to go into Worlds with his mullet?
I think so. I never know what that guy's doing. But yeah, he's a wild guy, but he's been so awesome for us. He's been training really hard. He's been focused. He's been taking care of business on the mat and off the mat. And but he has to be something with him. He's got to be a little bit crazy. And if the mullet lets him be crazy, that's when he's focused. When there's chaos, he's focused, and that's right where I want him. So I hope he does bring the mullet.
Right on. We do too. He's a very seems like he's a very polarizing figure at his weight class right now, where I don't know if I've ever seen someone that has done his job to earn his spot on the team and not get any love. But there's definitely some people out there that are giving him some love, but there's definitely some haters out there. How does he handle all that stuff? Is he kind of let that roll off his back? I know he's from the mean streets of Baltimore. It's kind of similar to being, from Jersey. You got that tough guy attitude. Do you advise him to just to stay off of social media and avoid that sort of stuff, or does that kind of motivate him?
So we've been back and forth on this a lot, and it's his page, and he can do what he wants on it, but he also knows that he represents Princeton and Rutgers in the NJRTC, so he needs to not get fired up by these trolls that tweet at him that have 2 followers and no profile pic. And he's from Baltimore, and he's not used to people talking to him like that and him not saying something back. But as he's getting a little more famous, if you will, and a lot more people are starting to talk to him, he's starting to let it roll off, and he's starting to not care about it and not let it affect him. And he knows that he's doing a lot of things right. And like you said, he earned it. He earned this spot more than anybody, just as much as anybody could. It's unfortunate that we didn't get a chance to wrestle David Taylor, but I think we were prepared for him. And I think people they're sad that David's not on the team. Everybody loves DT, and so do I. And he's a great guy, but something happened. He got hurt, and he couldn't compete, and so be it. We won the trials, and we won. We showed up and made weight at Final X, and so I don't know what these people want from him. I think that they know that he likes to talk back to him, so I think that fuels the fire for all the trolls a little more. But yeah, it's been a back and forth battle with him and I about this stuff, but it's all in good fun, really. He doesn't really let it affect him.
Good. That's good to hear, because I know that on social media the trolls can come out and they can get pretty irritating and get under your skin pretty quickly. And I just had never seen anything like that where, yeah, he did everything he was supposed to do. It was out of his control. He had nothing to do with David Taylor's injury. That was on him. That happened at the grapple at the Garden, that sort of stuff. So I'm pulling for him. I hope he does amazing and goes out there and crushes it with or without his mullet. But I'm hoping he carries the mullet into Kazakhstan.
Of course, yeah. We call him the Dragon Hawk. I don't know what it means, but he calls himself that, so we call him that. And so then all the trolls, he calls them Hater Hawks.
Well, and I also I forget who it was, but someone said, "Have you ever met a hater that's doing better than you?"
Right. That's exactly right. And that's kind of my point to him, that he doesn't need to give these guys the time of day. But he actually says that it makes him feel better when he comes back at him. So I'm like, hey, man, whatever makes you feel better, if you can still represent the NJRTC in a positive way, then go ahead, clap back out.
Yeah, right on.
Touching on how crazy Pat is, and you have all different kinds of characters. You got Bryce Meredith, you got Tyler Graff. How do you manage all the characters, and how does that work when they all come together?
Well, I think that's due to me being their sole coach. I only have 6 guys right now, and 6 is a couple more than I had all last year when we were really training. So that's not a lot of guys to focus on. So I stay in touch with these guys every day. We text and talk, and then I see them at 2 practices a day. So I really know these guys. So it doesn't really matter that Downey and Graff are polar opposites. I know both of these guys, and I really think I can tap into what they need in pretty much any specific moment. I know what Graff, his process at the World Championships, I already know what it's going to be. I know what Downey's is, and he likes crazy before, and Graff needs serenity. So I'll try and provide that for both guys at the same time, and they might not need to be around each other for the World Championships. But I think I can provide whatever makes them feel most comfortable, and I think that's why we're having success. And that goes through the whole year of training. A lot of guys are different when it comes to practice and what their body can handle and how hard they need to be pushed and what type of conditioning they need. And all of my guys are very different. And being able to tap into that and know what each guy needs at the same time is one reason why we're very successful and why we're jumping a lot of these other athletes that are trying to do the same thing that we are. And it's a lot easier for the freestyle guys because, like I said, I have 6. If I'm thinking about trying to do the same thing as a college coach, I don't know how I would do it or if I could do it well. But right now I have 6 guys, and I feel like I know them all pretty well, and I think I can tap into what they need to be at their peak performance.
And Bryce is pretty new, right? It was within the last month or 2?
Full time, yeah. He was with us I would say a week every month or every other month, and same kind of deal I had. He said once he saw it, he knew that this was the place for him, and it just took him a minute to make the move, which is understandable. It's pretty difficult traveling across the country and moving across the country and leaving your old life behind. But when you have an opportunity to make yourself peak your potential as an athlete, a guy like Bryce is not going to let it slide by.
Yeah, I'd imagine New Jersey is a little bit of culture shock from a guy from Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yeah, well, he fits right in, man. Bryce he's a chameleon. He's a great guy. He works really hard, so he's loving it out here.
And are him and Tyler at the same weight, or are they different weight classes?
He's a 65-kilo guy, so next year we're going to have all 65 and all 86, when this year we have really five different weights covered. But next year, the Olympic year, we're kind of all stuck into the 65 and 86, which will be fun for training and great to watch them battle it out, but still a little kind of sucky that we go down to 6 weights.
Is there any talk of them going back up, adding more weights like they have for the World Championships?
At the Olympics?
Yeah.
I don't know. I know definitely through 2024 they're going to be 6, I think, because that was the deal when they got, how wrestling was on the block to get eliminated from the Olympics. We had 20 and 24 already set. I think that's what, I'm not sure. I don't know, but I think it's going to be 6 for a little bit. It's not the easiest thing to change through the Olympic Committee.
Yeah, that was a big bummer when they put that on the chopping block, and was glad we were able to keep it on there, and even though we have a couple less weight classes, but it was kind of crazy to see that of all the things that are out there for the Summer Olympics, that was one of the ones that they were willing to we don't need this anymore.
Yeah, it was pretty disappointing, and it was like almost kind of a long shot to get it back in once they put us on their chopping block like that, and then fortunately the wrestling community stepped up. And we're still in the same spot, so that would have been a really big bummer.
Yeah. Reece, I got a couple more questions here for you, and then we'll let you get out of here. We really appreciate your time. You grew up in Indiana, correct? Wrestled in high school in Indiana?
Yeah.
And then went to Ohio State, and now are living in New Jersey. Can you give us your top 5 wrestling states?
I would go with, and these are not in order, New Jersey, PA, Ohio, California, and this is for high school wrestling. I'll go Iowa.
Okay. And now if you had to do not just high school wrestling, but all wrestling, high school, NCAA level, and then Olympic level, would there be much of a mix-up, change-up in there?
Yeah, well, you got to add in Oklahoma with Okie State and Oklahoma University. I think they're definitely in the top. Take out California. They've got some good programs with Fresno State coming up, but I don't think they're in the top 5 anymore. But New Jersey's coming up. PA, Ohio are obviously doing great. Iowa's always in the mix. And then Okie State. And I think I'll just cut it there.
Right on. Keep it diplomatic. That's what Mike Mal does.
Yeah.
Favorite wrestling shoe of all time?
I was sponsored by ASICS my whole career, and actually I was Nike for a little bit at Ohio State, but I really like the ASICS Aggressors. They got a lot of grip, and they stick to the mat pretty well.
Right on. What are you wearing these days?
Right now, I'm kind of like floating. I dropped out of ASICS because I was kind of open for some other options, and we're still in the talks with some people to try and create my own shoe or do some other different things, but that's still pretty far away. So I'm rocking whatever I can find. I have so many shoes laying around my house. I just kind of pick one as I walk out the door. I end up wearing the JB Elites often, and I wear some old school Dave Schultz ASICS, and then I bounce to Adidas. So I'm all over the place right now.
My favorite of all time, Richie gives me shit for this, but there's this brand called Atomics, and they made weightlifting shoes and wrestling shoes, but I always thought they were the most comfortable. Richie says I just like them because they're unique and no one has them, but that's my answer.
The Atomics.
Hell yeah.
I need some Atomics. I've never even seen that. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, it's like a weightlifting company, and they also do like some martial arts stuff, and they had like this hybrid kind of boot, but it was definitely no one else had them, so that's why he was so into them. Personally, I was a combat, like the OG combat speed guy before they like mass produced them back in it was 92, 93, 94. And then the other one I had was it was that ASIC Gel Assault that they made that was kind of like a hybrid, more like a training shoe than a competition shoe. But those are my 2 favorites of all time.
Yeah, those are great. I just recently went to, maybe last year, I went to Vladikavkaz, and I got some of the old Russian, some of their boots that they wear for the Russian national team, and they might be my favorite right now.
Oh, right on.
So, throwing some rapid fire at you right now, one question I have for you, knowing that the RTC trains at both Princeton and Rutgers, where do you stand when Princeton and Rutgers wrestles each other?
In the back. I can't beat that. So either I'm right in the middle. I'm not in either side though. I can't be more unbiased on which one. I don't have a favorite, and that's the honest truth. I'm so for both programs. So when that duel happens, I'm a fan. I don't root for either. I just sit back and watch and enjoy the show. and they put on quite the show last year. I think it was 17-18 in the duel. It was like such a back and forth match, and so yeah, I'm standing right in the middle or way back in the shadows.
So if both teams have Christmas parties on the same nights, the Humphreys are going to both parties?
Or none.
No,
yeah, I'll go to both. I'll definitely go to both.
No, it was a beautiful thing to watch that match this year on Flow at the Rack, and just to see the numbers that they're able to bring, and to hear Chris and Scott talk about like the first time that they met when they were coaching, and there was like 10 people in the stands, and you could hear crickets, to now that they're putting, over 5,000 people in the seats on a regular basis is really cool. Are you a coffee drinker?
I'm a coffee drinker, yeah. I drink coffee probably every day, maybe not every day.
Are you a fancy coffee drinker, or do you do like Mr. Coffee?
I'll do both.
Okay. So what's your typical coffee routine in the morning?
I do like the Keurig with. I'm not a black coffee drinker. I gotta have cream and the Splenda in there.
All right. Are you doing full fat heavy cream, or are you doing like half and half?
Anything that sweetens it up.
Okay, right on. And then one last thing for you. Actually, we got two things. One last one though is we're putting the word out there. We're trying to get people to level up, optimize their lives. Do you have any daily rituals or any daily practices that you do to kind of keep you true, to help you level up, whether it be some sort of a meditation routine or a workout routine, or are you writing down your goals? You got anything like that?
I don't personally do anything like that. My meditation is in the wrestling room. I lift maybe 4 or 5 times a week, if not more. My guys do technique 2 times a week in the morning, and then we're on the mats 5 times. So we're getting 11 or 12 workouts in per week. And that right there is kind of the simple plan. There's no secret to this. It's teach good technique, work extremely hard, and make your athletes have fun so they want to be there. I work these guys really hard, but I pay attention to them, and I don't grind them into the ground to where they really don't want to come the next day. And if they do, then I let them take off. So I think the real secret is to enjoy your time in there, in the room and in the weight room and on the mat and doing technique and watching film, and then do it as often as possible.
Right on. One last thing for you. There was a big match yesterday at Wilkes-Barre University with Zane Rutherford and Yanni Diakomahalis. Have you trained with either one of those guys?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Zane out in Istanbul when we were there a couple months ago, and he was actually my roommate out there. So and Yanni was at that tournament as well, and so I got to get to know Zane a lot more than I had used to. But and Yanni, I'd known Yanni for a long time, and so it's been a process for those guys. It's pretty crazy. So back in 2011, I had to go through a process like that. I won the World Team Trials, and but Sean Bunch had won a tournament prior to the trials, and it was in the rules that if you had won a tournament and you lose in the finals, that you had to go to another tournament to see who was on the world team. So I could feel for Zane. It was like he won the team, but he kept getting kind of held back in his training for the World Championships, and I'm so glad that it's done now for whoever won, and Zane won and he earned a spot, but I'm just really glad for both of them that it's over and they can get focused on the next task. And for Zane, it's the World Championships, and I think he's going to do great. And you talked about Downey getting some haters, but I think Zane had some too, and I don't get that. I don't understand where all these people are. Maybe it's just wrestling getting more famous and more people are talking about it, but Zane has done everything to earn that spot and more. And I think he's going to be the perfect guy to represent the country at 65 kilos, and I think he's right in there to win a medal for sure.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, if you're putting on the red, white, and blue, we should get behind you, regardless of where you're from, what kind of hairstyle you have, what kind of arbitration they had to get through to have another match or didn't have another match. Like, when everybody does better, and we're all on Team USA. So let's just get behind all that and stop putting the hate out there on social media.
Yeah, man, I couldn't be more on your side on that one, because people don't understand that these athletes are real people, and they see these comments, and it might negatively affect their performance, or at least their training or mood for that day. And it's really just, it's not anything positive that's going to help Team USA. And there's plenty of people that I root for that lose, but as soon as they lose and we got somebody else representing the country, I'm on Team USA's team, and I'm rooting for them, and I think everybody should do the same.
Absolutely, 100%. Reece, we really appreciate you coming on today. If you have any things you want to plug in terms of social media, where people can find you, where they can find stuff about the NJRTC, if there's any place that people can donate for the NJRTC, put it on out there for us now.
Yeah, so you can go to NewJerseyRTC.com, spell it out, NewJerseyRTC.com, or you can follow me at Highlight Humphrey on Instagram. You can follow the NJRTC at NJRTC, and then we have one more where we vlog overseas competitions and give you guys a behind-the-scenes look, and that's going to be my YouTube channel, youtube.com/highlighthumphrey, and I hope to see you guys soon. Say hi if you see me in person, and write a comment or send me a message, and I pretty much always get back to everybody.
Right on, Reece. We really appreciate you. Enjoy your evening in New Jersey. Safe travels to Kazakhstan, and best of luck to you and the guys. Tell them that the Airy Bros wish them luck, and then we'll be in touch offline because we want to get in touch with your dad so we can help out with the Rocky Mountain Wrestling Club.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Right on, brother. Have a great night.
All right, you too.
Bye. Reece Highlight Humphrey.
Yo, that was dope, bro.
No, that was awesome. It was great to have him on. Like I said in the beginning, we are New Jersey wrestling through and through, and anything we can do to help promote New Jersey wrestling, the NJRTC, Rutgers, Princeton, anything that they got going on, it's just a good thing. And it's it was super cool. And it goes back to what Matt Cooper said, was just like, don't let anyone big time you, just put it out there. And like the responses that we're getting, guys like Reece coming on, and some of these other people, it's just it blows my mind.
It blows my mind. It's awesome how cool he was. He just came on and talked to us like he's known us for years, and I think that just goes back to the sport of wrestling. Maybe I'm like Joe Rogan with jiu-jitsu and always putting wrestling over, but 9 out of 10 times you meet somewhere in public and you find out, hey, I wrestled, you wrestled, you at least have one friend in the room, or someone if shit goes down you can trust. And I think that's what the sport creates, right? A lot of people aren't making a lot of money. I mean, if people were making a lot of money in wrestling, Reece Humphrey would have been one of them, because he was at the top level. What do you say, 3-time world team member? That's pretty impressive. But at the end of the day, those guys can be world team members, Olympic team members, gold medalists, and they're still an average person, because they're not making that much money. It keeps you humble. And to have him on to talk about what's going on and the culture, and here's a podcast we get to put out a little early because it's going to be right in time with the World Championships. The Airy Bros support wrestling, and we're going to put out a World Championship podcast for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love it. I mean, I would get back out on the mat, and drill and do that sort of stuff. It's always had a place, close to my heart, even though I went the running route and have kind of done more of that sort of stuff. But for me, I want to get this stuff out there in terms of like training, weight cutting, positivity, mindset, like all those sorts of things where, like, if I could get back in a time machine and go back to 1990 or 1991 and be like, grab myself and be like, yo, hang on this fucking bar until you could pull yourself and get your chin over it, and then keep doing that all day long. Eat vegetables, eat broccoli, work on your grip. Was that the other thing we talked about? It was like,
Yeah.
grip work. And yeah, don't be afraid to wrestle Greco. Like, get in there, hand fight, learn these different things. I love it. I love it. And I think if we can help anyone at any level, even especially at the younger level, or get through to some of the parents at the younger level, like, dude's dad was a silver medalist and the Olympic coach for 2 different countries, and he never approached wrestling. He didn't start wrestling until he went to his dad and said, I want to wrestle.
Which is absurd, because that's like a 1%.
Well, it's not absurd, but it fucking blew my mind. Like, that's not what I was expecting from him at all.
No, I was expecting doing back arches and all that at a young age and starting freestyle at a young age. That's because if you watch him wrestle and you see his throws, that's what it looks like. It looks like he's been doing that his whole life. And for him to say 6th grade, it's like you come on and you do a podcast with someone, you research a little bit before you do it, and then they blow your mind with something like that. And to go back to what you say, and something we touch on all the time, is about the time machine. I think the time machine is us going to a wrestling program, hopefully connecting with Reece's dad and helping, right? That's the time machine, because we both know there's a lot of the same shit that, you're 20, 30 years removed, I'm 10, 20 years removed. It's still the same shit. You know what I mean? It's still, you have someone like Brian, and, I was talking to him today, I'll always put him over in anything he needs, because if I was a wrestling coach, I don't want to be putting that message out. I would want to be like that, that guy who's out there being a positive experience for kids and not making it all about wins and losses. I think that's the biggest detriment you can do to a kid is make it about getting your hand raised.
Right, and everything that Brian said on that podcast, resonated with us, and there are too many coaches that are not like that, and they make it about the wins and losses, or they make it about themselves and their legacy as a coach. That was one of the things that he said, was like, it doesn't matter what my win and loss record is. I want these kids to come away with this, with a good experience, being better human beings, learning how to strive and achieve for goals and work for goals, how to have that mindset, how to set those goals, all that sort of stuff. Man, like, we need more of that. We need more Reece Humphrey. We need more PD3, guys like that are more Mike Mowles, like people that are out there promoting the sport, and less kids that are so burnt out but are still winning state titles on fumes, because they're not giving back to the sport because they fucking hate the sport.
If anything, they're taken away because someone has a conversation with them or goes up to them, oh, you're a state champ. Fuck that sport. You know what I mean? And, I'm not going to lie, man. There was a long period of my life where I just wanted to be Bieber. I just wanted to be that dude who walked away from it, never looked back at it, and shit on it. But at the end of the day, wrestling is such a part of who I am. That's just not me, As much as I could want to surround myself around it, like, at the end of the day, what's going to get me out of a dark hole is the fact that I'm a wrestler and the lessons I've learned from wrestling. And that's why I'm so appreciative of it. That's why I want to get more guys like Reece, more guys like Brian on, because, we have a platform and we can provide with, hey, this is your perception of the sport. We're going to turn it on its head and show you a whole nother side of it and a life-changing side of it.
Yeah. And it is any athletic endeavor.
It's just close to my heart.
Especially individual athletic endeavors, like team sports. Not that there's not a team component to wrestling or to running, or swimming, you know what I mean? But for the most part, those sports where it's me against you, whether, it's wrestling or running or whatever, it's an individual thing. I feel there's a lot more life lessons that come about from that, and things you can learn about yourself, what you need, what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, what things you need to work on. Those lessons are what's the word I'm looking for? They're invaluable.
Yeah, I don't know if I've touched on this before, but...
Man, you touch on a lot of shit.
I get touchy, bro. I get touchy with the feels. I'm all touchy-feely today. When me and Gucci were coaching with Mike at Middlesex, we had a wrestler come up to us, and at the time we were, preaching, this sport is going to give you life-changing experiences. It's going to help you throughout all the hard times in your life. And that kid came up to us, and he was one of those kids that won a state championship on fumes. And he was just like, can you give me an example? Like, just give me one example where the sport helped you, because I'm sick of hearing coaches say that. And now I feel like I could write the Bible on it. At that time, it was like, had a half-ass answer. But now, 10 years older, I feel like I have a whole lifetime of examples of how I've been able to use wrestling to get to better places, or use it in situations, where I maybe without wrestling I'm not going to do or perform the same. But it goes back to you saying, what happens when you get punched in the face. When I get punched in the face, those wrestler instincts come out. When life gets fucked, those wrestler instincts come out. And that's why I'll always mark out, and that's why I'll always put guys like Reece and Brian over, because they have that experience, and that maybe something I say doesn't resonate in someone listening to this podcast, but something one of those guys say resonates in them.
100%. So if you're a wrestler, you do some cool shit, slide into those DMs. We'll get you on the podcast. PD3, we want you. Tyler Graff, Nick Suriano, Anthony Ashnault, Bryce Meredith, any of the guys from the NJRTC. Coach Scott Goodall, where you at? We want you. Coach Chris Ayers, Team New Jersey back in the day.
Joe Dubuque, where you at, dog? Yo, I want the
1993.
I want the Joe Dubuque, take him down, let him up, man. The best.
2 for 1.
I'm saying Joe Dubuque was one of the best New Jersey high school wrestlers I've ever seen. He might not be on the level of Damian Hong, because I think he only won 2 times. But, man, Joe Dubuque, I forget who he wrestled a kid from Walk Hill Valley the one year, and like at the end of the match, I thought the kid was gonna commit suicide, because Joe Dubuque was being Joe Dubuque, and he was one of those guys that in college, and same in high school, the first 2 years, like what's going on? Why isn't he winning? And then he comes and he wins 2 in both high school and college, and looks unstoppable. But yeah, let's get Joe Dubuque on this bitch.
We'll get them all.
Yeah,
we'll get them all, little by little, one by one. That's what we do at Airy Bros Radio. This has been another episode. Hope that you all enjoy it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, slide into those DMs. Subscribe on iTunes. Give us a review. We got people all over the place. Spotify, Spreaker, iTunes, Mixcloud. Not on SoundCloud, but yeah. Give us some love. Tell us what you think, even if you think we suck. Yeah, we want to hear it.
Rate, review, let us know you're listening, and if you got friends, share. Share. Give us a repost. Hey, you want to get on the podcast? Give us a couple reposts. Get us a couple followers. We'll get you on here.
Until next time, it's your boy, Rich Airy, a.k.a. the 100-Mile Dick, and my dance partner, as always,
is Prince James. We're coming to you from Metropolitan State University. As always, it was a pleasure.
And don't forget, when everybody does better, everybody does better. Much love. Namaste.